Tilder! What is this? This is the Falcon Eyes F7 Pocketlite. How much does it cost? Approximately $140 to $150 depending on if you get the diffuser and grid kit. It's magnetic, has 1.5 hour battery life in bicolored modes, 2 hours of battery life in RGB mode, supports quick charging 3.0, it's larger than the Bowling P1. Could you use it as a key light in certain scenarios? Yes. Do I recommend it? Yes.
Done. Roll that intro.
What's going on, everybody? You're watching Too Long Didn't Read Filmmaker, where the answers comes first, the reasons come last, but we're constantly and always still learning. So today we're gonna find out whether or not the Falcon Eyes F7 RGB Pocketlite is gonna be the right light for you and your overall setup. And Falcon Eyes was really gracious in sending this kit out to me for this review. And generally speaking, I'm very excited about this one because ever since the Bowling P1, RGB pocket lights have just been flourishing. A lot of different companies are either making the exact same version or they're trying to make something different. So I'm really happy to say, like Pilotfly, they have the ability to use a smartphone app, and Falcon Eyes has included some very interesting things that differentiates their RGB from the rest of the competition. So without further ado, let's get started. Coming in at approximately $150 depending on which package you get. I specifically have the one that has a diffuser and the honeycomb attachment, but the Falcon Eyes F7 is actually larger than the Bowling P1 and the Atom Cube RX1, which allows for extra LEDs to pump out even more light. Now in the package, you're gonna get yourself a carrying pouch, some mounting hardware like a hot shooter /20, and in my version, I have a double /20 ball mount, and you also get the USB Type-A to USB Type-C charging port. Now, just speaking about the light itself, yes, it's an RGB light. It allows you to choose the hue and saturation as well as having a bicolor mode for daylight or tungsten. And it comes with a variety of RGB effects like your sirens, candle flickers, and they do include a little sticker that you can attach to the light should you not remember which one is which. So that's definitely nice that you have a reference point there. But the selling point for the F7 is not only is it bigger, but it's got magnets inside that allows you to mount them to essentially anything magnetic like I have here. In fact, I specifically used the magnetic mount for these demonstrations because I wanted to see, could you actually use it in this manner and have it be reliable? Now, generally speaking, depending on what kind of surface you're putting it on, it's definitely recommended that the surface that you're putting it on is flat. So something like a refrigerator, maybe the side door of a car. Those surfaces are large and flat for the magnetics to latch on to. In this example, where I actually have it sticking to a C-stand, because the C-stand is curved in a rod shape, it does hold, but it's not as secure and it could swing around. So depending on what it is that you want to mount it on, make sure the magnetic surface is flat. In terms of the F7 and its overall output, it's definitely more powerful than the Bowling P1 while staying pretty much on par with the Atom Cube RX1. In terms of the battery life, because the Falcon Eyes F7 is larger with more LED chips, we are going to see a slight decrease in overall battery life when you're operating it at 100% brightness. And this is totally to be expected. So if you're using all of the tungsten LEDs, which is rated at 2500K, you're looking at 1.5 hours on 100% brightness. If you're using the daylight or blue chips, which is rated at 9000 Kelvin, same thing, 1.5 hour. If you find the exact in-between, right in between those two, which is actually 5750 Kelvin, using both of those LEDs still sees the 1.5 hour rating. So that's actually not that bad in terms of a pocket RGB, and I kind of like that it is overall consistent. So no matter what color temperature you're in, you're gonna get about 1.5 hours at full brightness. Now RGBs are a little bit different in that they don't necessarily use more power than our bicolored LED chips. So in RGB mode, when I had it towards cyan, which was using the green and the blue chip, we were seeing approximately 2 hours at 100% brightness. Now in the last couple minutes of your operation, the LED is going to start dimming. So within 5 minutes of your battery completely dying, it is going to start dimming down. Not a major issue because generally speaking, if you're kind of already at that last bit of battery power, you're probably going to swap it out or at least attach a battery bank to it. And speaking of battery banks, yes, you can power it with an external USB battery bank. There is one caveat. When you have it plugged into power, you're only able to use 70% of brightness. Now, this completely makes sense because if you have it at 100% brightness, the Falcon Eyes is able to pull more power than the battery can actually recharge. And if you do this for a very long extended period of time, you're definitely going to overheat the whole system, and that's something you don't want to do. So Falcon Eyes does have a nice safety feature in terms of the maximum output is 70%, which is still quite a bit of power. Now in my specific kit, I was sent along a honeycomb attachment as well as a diffuser attachment. Now if you're not familiar with what these light modifiers actually do, if we take a look at this example, this is just the bare light hitting the side of my face. If I attach the honeycomb modifier, what this does is it kind of focuses the beam, so you'll notice that now the light is only at my face and it doesn't light up the wall behind me. This is definitely awesome because generally speaking, LED panels are a very, very wide flood beam. This one you can kind of spot it down a little bit so that you don't introduce extra light into surrounding areas. In terms of the diffuser, this is going to make the light softer, but it's also going to cut down on your overall output. So when you have the diffuser on and you have the light much closer to you, it's going to eliminate those hard shadows on your face and kind of give you a softer look. Now, while this does do a good job in terms of softening the light, it's definitely not going to replace a softbox. But if you do need to soften the light in a pinch, using these attachments will do it for you. That being said, the attachments are made of a rubber silicone type material, and because of the way it has to be attached on, where you do have to stretch the bands in the back, I could see these eventually failing due to wear and tear, and you could probably super glue them back together or do some modifications so that they attach easily. But generally speaking, I also understand why they didn't make a hard plastic version, because if you're trying to pack it away and something crushes on top of it, they're more likely to snap and break. So it's kind of a toss-up in terms of what you decide is better for you, but I ultimately understand why they went with the rubber silicone route. So now that I've reviewed a bunch of different RGB pocket lights from different companies, I wanted to see, could I use them and just kind of light a much larger scene than being confined into a small space like a car? And to do this test, I went into a 2-bay garage, and I mainly stayed in the 1 bay, and then the 2nd bay was where my camera was sitting. So in this specific example, I was using the Pilotfly Atom Cube RX1 in the back, shooting it at me, which supplied me with a hair light. This was set at 100% brightness. The color that's splashing the background, that is the Bowling P1 on a light stand, and that is also at 100% brightness as well as 100% saturation. The key light, which is the Falcon Eyes F7, which was actually being held by a spring clamp that had clamped onto the garage rails because my spring clamps were magnetic, I literally just stuck it on there to give me that overhead light. This light, the Falcon Eyes F7, was only at 70%. Because it was so powerful, I don't actually need to go at 100%. 70% was enough to light up my face. Now I know that this is a very moody scene with a whole lot of shadows, and generally speaking, because of how small these lights are and not emulating a larger source, you're not really going to get soft lights out of the box, and putting the diffuser on it is going to kill off a lot of the power. It does work, and I was able to still get the same exposure on my face at 100%, so just know that you're probably going to see approximately a 30% decrease in overall brightness if you're using the F7's diffuser. Now in my next test, I wanted to see, could I use the Falcon Eyes F7 and shoot it through diffusion material to make the light source larger and give me a softer light? So in this example, I used my 5-in-1 reflector, I took off the outer cover, and then had the Falcon Eyes shooting through the diffusion material. In terms of how far they were away from each other, I want to say it was approximately 2 feet away from the Falcon Eyes and the diffuser diffusion material. In this situation, I had to stand pretty close to the diffusion material, and it's literally sitting just out of frame. In this case, yes, it's going to light you just fine, but the moment you step anywhere from 1.5 to 2 feet away, you definitely lose a whole lot of light output. And again, this is not really a fault of the Falcon eyes, it's just simply, it's not meant to be used in this way. So that being said, the question is, can you actually use the Falcon eyes in these Pocket RGBs as key light setups? Yes and no. If you're literally shooting in the dark, I guess in terms of an interview and you want a moodier interview, then these Pocket RGBs definitely can supply you with enough light to get you through the interview. But in terms of an overall narrative filmmaking kit, if you're in these moody setups and you have to get this shot done because you're running out of time, then these Pocket RGBs are definitely powerful enough in a pinch, and you definitely want to see if you can get your shots done within 1.5 to 2 hours. But generally speaking, these are going to be really awesome little accent lights to kind of pop some color, or even use it as a fill light to soften some shadows on some actors. But generally speaking, if you're vlogging and stuff like that, then these Pocket RGBs are freaking amazing. So what's the bottom line here? Is the Falcon Eyes F7 something that you should be considering in your overall kit? And I have to say, definitely consider it, because even at $150, which is on par for pretty much all Pocket RGB lights in this category, this specific kit does come with a honeycomb grid attachment, which I do love. This definitely gives you more options of how to use the light, because the other lights, they just shoot a really, really wide beam and it's gonna get everywhere. But this honeycomb cuts it off, and then the light's not gonna spill elsewhere. Also, the diffusion attachment is nice when you're in a pinch. There definitely are other ways you can diffuse this light, but it's nice to know that you get both in this kit. Now, while the Falcon Eyes F7 doesn't have the smartphone capabilities, it makes up for it by being larger and being able to output a lot more light. And because it has this magnetic backing, which is another very unique feature that is definitely handy when I was doing my little scenario where I used a spring clamp, clamped it onto the garage rail, and then I magnetically stuck it onto the spring clamp. Those spring clamps will come in handy. If you don't have something magnetic, but you have a way to just clamp onto whatever material or whatever thing that's out there, it's nice to know that you don't have to use a whole bunch of grip material. You can literally just mount this light anywhere as long as you can get that spring clamp onto something. Another way that I can see myself using this light is Hollywooding the light. If you don't know what Hollywooding a light is, it's literally when a poor PA or grip has to hold a light panel or some sort of light and move it all around as the camera is moving along with it. And this is a really, really fast way to get a shot, as long as you can coordinate everybody together. So, in my wacky idea, I could totally see someone going to Home Depot, getting a 6-foot square steel tubing that you can get, and essentially that's going to magnetically stick onto it, and now you have this PA that's using this pole like a microphone boom and hovering it over the scene or wherever it needs to be. You can attach multiple F7s onto it and therefore throw light from a higher angle while running around with the camera crew. I don't know when I'm gonna do that, but now that I know that this thing's magnetic and I can literally do something like that, it's something, something worth trying. So anyways, I would say if you've been looking for a Pocket RGB light, definitely give the Falcon Eyes F7 a look to see if it's gonna match into your kit. And hey, that is it for this week, everybody. If this video has made all the influence in your purchasing decisions, I would truly appreciate it if you check out my Amazon affiliate links down below. Again, this costs nothing extra to you, just gives me a little compensation so I can continue making videos like this for you. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave it down below. I will get to them as fast as I can. And until then, like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you guys in the next one.